Good evening. I'm Michael Tobin, President of the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust. Thank you for coming and choosing this event over, we know there's many competing things going on this evening for your time, so glad you're here. We'd also like to thank Sustainable Wellesley and the Wellesley Free Library for co-sponsoring this. This is our ongoing speaker series event. We have two formal educational events each year, spring and fall, among other aspects of education for our mission. And so we've very excited, since this is a key topic in town. You'll hear more about that in a second. The Land Trust has been here since 1958, before the Natural Resources Commission, before wetlands regulations, protecting open space in Wellesley, and we're continuing on that mission. We protect 13 properties in town. And neighboring towns in Needham and Weston as well on the borders. And we have some exciting projects that are ongoing to increase that amount. If you've got our newsletter, you can pick it up on the side, announcing 3 new projects, including the North 40 here in Wellesley. And just before I turn it over, I want to remind you that we have bird walks. Because of the warming climate, it used to be every Sunday in May. We've keep pushing it earlier and earlier into April now. Our last one of the season is this Sunday, 8 a.m. at the Morse's Pond Gate on Turner Road. So some phenomenal birds we have seen there in previous years. So please join us for that event. And if you're not aware of it, the ever classic Walks in Wellesley. Get outside. And there's parts of Wellesley, even if you've been here for 40 years, you have not yet explored. So this will help find you some of those corners of Wellesley that you haven't yet seen. It's got a great map in the back. We've got some copies on the side for $20. And so please get involved with Land Trust. We have many exciting things going on. Oh, including for family-aged, for children, families. This weekend are also Nancy's Fairy and Troll House building event at Pickle Point. You can just Google it and you'll see in the Wellesley Wonderful Weekend event. So the young kids will love it and change their experiences with the outdoors that will last a long time. So with that, I will turn it over to our Vice President, Judy. Thank you.
Hello, folks. This evening, the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust is pleased to present, in collaboration with the Wellesley Free Library and Sustainable Wellesley, Kelly Beatty, discussing the effect of light on home, health, and heaven. Our past few lectures has presented examples of collaboration between housing and conservation advocates, the effect of climate change on water runoff and the health of the Charles River. And tonight, we will help you understand and appreciate the effect of light in the darkness. Kelly has been explaining the science and wonder of astronomy to the public since 1974, when he joined the staff at Sky and Telescope, and some of our members here tonight are familiar with him from that and some of his television productions. After 43 years, he says, of pounding the keyboard, he retired from full-time work in the early 2018, but remains actively involved in many of the Sky and Telescope articles, tours, and other projects, including the best gig in the world, being a lecturer on the Celebrity Series cruise, the Celebrity cruise ships, in a few days going to Scandinavia for a cruise. He's an award-winning, an award-winning writer, communicator. He holds a bachelor's degree from California Institute of Technology and a master's in science journalism from BU. Kelly has been active in efforts to reduce light pollution for more than 30 years. He served for more than a decade on the board of directors for the International Sky Association and is now an officer with Dark Sky, Massachusetts chapter. So we really thank him for being here. This is being videotaped so that all those people that we really, including you, that we're trying to reach, the members of various boards of our town, are meeting tonight at 7 o'clock, and all boards meeting. So of course we have to have that kind of conflict. So this is now going to be available, and Kelly has also volunteered to come back and talk to them if they so wish. So with that, Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Judy, and thank you all for being here this evening. There are a lot of competing interests, aren't there? But we are going to have what I hope will be an eye-opening and so, yes, as Judy explained, I've been involved in this for a long time. One of the things I concentrate on within Dark Sky, Massachusetts is outreach like this. I give this talk a lot, and Judy apologized for how few. She had hoped to fill the room, and I confessed to her that I gave a talk in Somerville on this very topic a week ago, and there were 2 people. So you're doing much better. We're going to be going through some aspects, every aspect of light pollution, about over the next hour or so. And I want to start by, this will resonate with you. This is a quote about how we've lost touch with the nighttime environment. With lights and ever more lights, we drive the holiness and beauty of the night back to the forest and the sea. Could have been written last week, but in fact was written more than a century ago by Henry Beston, who spent a year on Cape Cod and came to this sobering realization even then. I said a century ago, well, it was 1928. So light pollution is going to be the name of our what we're talking about tonight, and it's basically any encroachment of artificial light at night that doesn't go where it's supposed to. We in the dark sky movement are not asking for no light. We're asking for the right light in the right situation. And we can categorize light pollution in different ways. There's glare, there's light trespass, and any disturbance of the nighttime landscape. But the upshot is that often the lights that we have are so poorly designed that they send most of their light up into the sky, or it doesn't do any good, and creates all kinds of problems. This is my quintessential list. By the way, I'm from Chelmsford, and this is a light fixture in a hotel, which I will not name, Marriott Courtyard. And you know, we see this a lot here in New England, these period antique-looking fixtures which look terrific by day, but they were obviously chosen by people that did not care or did not bother to see what they would look like at night because they look like this. And you can see that this is you can see the bulb is here just, you know, there's no shielding or anything, and it casts light in every possible direction. I will point out that the one place it should be shining light at its base, there's a shadow down here. Okay, so we can use this to kind of give you a fundamental about how we in the lighting game. By the way, I am not a lighting professional. I don't pretend to be one, but I hope to convey what I've learned just self-taught over all these years. We think of uplight as anything that goes above horizontal. This is the kind of light that you see when you see a picture of the Earth taken from space, and we'll get to that. And useful light is the light that hits the task area, the target area where you really want the light to be. But becoming more and more important is the light in what we call the glare zone, the wedge of angle below horizontal where it can hit your eye and affect your ability to see at night. You all are familiar with glare, I am sure. I suspect you have all encountered a car coming at you at night with its high beams on, and the newer style headlights have a lot more blue light in them. We'll get to that too. And you know, your eyes had started to adjusting to the darkness, but when you get that harsh glare, it really makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to see where you're going on the road. And so that's the glare part. Now you might think that the worst possible light is the light that goes straight up. as again, what you see when photographed from space. It is not. If you think about it, the Earth's atmosphere is pretty thin, 50 miles or so. And once that light goes up and leaves the atmosphere, it can't do any more damage. The worst light is the light that's emitted just above horizontal. This is a computer simulation showing three beams of light. This one is going in a narrow cone almost straight up. And the colors indicate how much of that light is being scattered by the atmosphere. And as the beam gets wider and wider and closer to horizontal, notice how much scatter is occurring here. I live in Chelmsford, about 25 miles from downtown Boston. And when my skies are pretty dark, but when I look straight up, I'm seeing light pollution, in part caused by lights in Boston that are shining out sideways in my direction. Okay, so that's what this is all about. Now, we have made some strides. When I started giving this talk 25 years ago, these are the most common. LEDs didn't exist. And so old style streetlights, you might see a few of them now, they have this kind of salad bowl bottom to them, and the light fixture is right there. When it shines, that salad bowl is actually it's a kind of like a lens that's trying to distribute the light, but the light itself is allowed, some of it goes up. To create just exactly that kind of glare I was talking about. A later design, the one on the bottom, is the light. Actually, the light element is here inside the cap. And so all of the light goes down. None of it goes above horizontal. That's good. That was a major step forward. This is one of the worst kinds of lights there is. It's called a wall pack. And it's something that a business often, occasionally a residence, will slap onto the side of a building with the intent of trying to light an entire parking lot, right? You might see this in unnamed drugstore chains like CVS, or something like, or fast food organizations, mix something. And so what happens is when those lights are turned on, this is now a side view, you can see the incredible breadth of the cone, and so much of this is wasted, and of course it creates a huge glare source. I don't know how bad it is here in Wellesley, but in Chelmsford, along our main thoroughfares, in the public right-of-way where the poles are, the businesses there can ask National Grid to install a floodlight on the utility pole. They don't have to pay for that light, and then that light is turned on and they're charged for the electricity. It's a cheap way to get parking lot lighting. But unfortunately, at night, you get this incredible, again, these are completely uncontrolled in terms of where the light is going. And so that's bad. Now, sports lighting has been a hot topic, I hear, here in Wellesley. This was taken at the U.S. Lawn Tennis Association in New York, Flushing, right? Yes? Yes? Okay. And what I'm showing you here is these are the existing bad lights. These are the lights on the next court. You hardly even knew they were on, but they're on. This is what you have over your high school field right now. They're essentially, by Musco, they are the industry leader in creating dark sky friendly lighting. So you chose well here. Okay, I'm going to go through 5 reasons that light pollution is bad. And the first, and you might think this is my main topic, but it's not, is the loss of the starry night sky. Now, none of you are old enough to remember 2003. It's such a young audience. But there was a major blackout at that time affecting the Northeast and especially southern Canada. Toronto went completely dark. Detroit, Ottawa, all those cities went dark, not here in Boston. And so there was an amateur astronomer living in Toronto. This took place in August. Now, for an astronomer, August is a wonderful time because the Milky Way is like directly overhead in the evening. And so Todd, during this blackout, got his camera out and he took a picture toward Toronto. And this is the beautiful Milky Way that he was able to see during the blackout. The next day, by the way, the lights down there, those are candles in his house. The next night, the lights came back on. He took the picture again, and this is what he has. This is what he dealt with normally, right? And so this is what we've lost in terms of the night sky. Now, it turns out that one of our great partners in this campaign is the National Park Service, which about a quarter century ago decided that the nighttime environment at the parks was as important as the daytime. And so they hired a team of astronomers to go around the country and take all sky photography of the national parks to see how much light pollution they were dealing with. And so this is Natural Bridges. It was the lead photo that I showed you to begin with. And Natural Bridges is in Utah. It's a very dark place. So let me set the stage here. Up at the top, it's a 360 panorama. And then the circle on the bottom is a fisheye view pointing straight up. The purple bands that you see are the only light source. There's a tiny, what we call the little light dome. There are a couple of small towns in the distant. But most of what you see, including this big arc here, that's the Milky Way. That's how dark this is. This is an exquisitely dark place. They also went to Mojave National Monument, and a very different, by the way, the colors are color-coded for brightness. So I don't see any blacks or purples there to speak of. This huge bubble here on the horizon, that is Las Vegas, about 50 miles away. And they make these color contoured maps by taking actual photographs. So this is one of the photographs that they actually took in the direction of Las Vegas. And that streak that you see in the center vertically is not an artifact. That's real. That's from the Luxor Hotel in downtown Las Vegas, 50 miles away. So it's a stunningly awful picture. Now, a little closer to home, they came as close as Arcadia National Park, a wonderful place that is great for stargazing, and for many years was the site of an annual festival called the Maine Dark Sky Festival. They don't hold it anymore. But in any case, you now know the drill. And there is a bubble there on the horizon from Bar Harbor. But Bar Harbor has, since this picture was taken, has instituted a night sky, a dark sky ordinance. And they haven't been back to take a new version. But you can see the sky is pretty dark there. And so many of these, after this effort to categorize all the parks, many of the parks then went and did the work to improve the lighting that they had to make it dark sky friendly. And one of them was Yosemite National Park. I'm originally from California. This park is not far from my hometown. And you can see the kinds of lighting that was installed: amber lighting, low light levels, illuminating footpaths and not trying to, illuminate the sides of buildings. And so the Dark Sky International, formerly the International Dark Sky Association, has a certification program where a town, a park, can submit evidence that they are espousing and maintaining dark sky criteria. And here in the Northeast, we have a couple up in Maine. One is Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, and there's a whole story there. Catch me afterwards. And also the Appalachian Mountain Club has a whole bunch of property up in northern Maine. Those two places are dark sky locations, certified dark sky places. The Katahdin one, it's what's called a sanctuary. It's the darkest of dark. On their applications, 90,000 acres. They had to list all the lights in that 90,000 acres. There were 6. So that's how dark this place is. Really an incredible place. All right, that's the sky glow. So number 2 is a visual impairment, our eyes. And this is your physiology for the evening. Our eyes work using 2 sets of sensors. During the daytime, we use what are called cones. They give us our color vision. They're red, green, and blue sensitive cones in our eyes, in our retinas. And they give us our color vision, but they're relatively insensitive to light. So it has to be pretty bright to see color in an absolute sense. And you notice that the cones have a peak sensitivity in this sort of yellow-green part of the spectrum, not accidentally in the same part of the spectrum that the sun has its brightest visible light. At night, our vision switches to the rods in our eye, which are, first of all, they are much more sensitive. This is a logarithmic scale. Every division is a power of 10. So the rods are like 1,000 times more sensitive to light. This is our night vision, okay? And our rods are really great. And the problem is it's a black and white system. That's why when my friend Larry and I bring people up to see the Orion Nebula in our telescopes, it looks gray. It doesn't look the riot of greens and reds that a color picture will take. Or some of you maybe went chasing for auroras over the past year, and maybe you thought you saw an aurora, but then when you took a picture with your camera, you saw all the colors. The camera recorded the colors that are there, but your eyes just couldn't see it. Okay. What I want you to notice, though, is that the sensitivity of the rods peaks in the blue-green part of the spectrum. This is where our eyes are most sensitive at night. So here we are. We're in a backyard scene, and there's a bright source of light. Now, that bright source of light is creating glare, and our eyes react to that, but the pupils contract and shrink because there's too much light coming into our eye. Well, that wide open pupil is what allows you to see in the dim spaces, and when your pupil contracts, you lose that ability. So you can't see the bad guy standing in the doorway here in the gate. When you get rid of the glare, your night vision is restored, and you can see things like that. So when we go out and we talk to people about creating, safe, dark sky friendly spaces. Yes, it's about keeping the light below horizontal, but it's also about minimizing glare. And that is a big, 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 big part of it. Now, this is not news to you. There are other creatures in our world besides humans that inhabit the night. Roughly 70% of all species do something at night. They migrate, they mate, they eat, whatever. And so consequently, they are, in some cases, really adversely affected by light at night. I'll give you a couple of examples. Fireflies. Everybody loves fireflies. This is a photo taken, I'm not sure where the park was. Fireflies are giving off this light as a mating attractant. The males are trying to attract the females. And it turns out that there are different species of fireflies, and they give off different patterns of flashing to attract the other sex of their particular species. And so there are dashes and dots and in all kinds of patterns. The problem is that when a firefly has to compete with a lot of light pollution, it's hard to see the signal. And what research has shown is that the males are still out there flashing their tails off, but the females stay home. And I overheard Mike say that you have an ongoing speaker series, spring and fall, and I would suggest you get a woman whose name is Avalon Owens. She's a Harvard researcher. She is one of the world's experts on fireflies and the impact of light pollution on fireflies. She's also done a lot of broader research on something called the insect apocalypse. I didn't make that up. It's a real term. Look it up. In the last 50 years, we have lost in the last 50 years, we've lost 75% of all insects. I'll repeat. In the last 50 years, we've lost 75% of all insects. Now, there's lots of reasons. Habitat loss, pesticides, but light pollution is a factor in that. Here's another firefly study from South America. Here's a college out in the middle of nowhere. They installed bright lights over their athletic field, not nearly as well constrained as the ones you have at the high school. And then they studied the habits of the fireflies nearby as varying distances away from the stadium with the lights on or off. And you can see the difference here. When the lights are on, many fewer of the fireflies actually went out. So this is a real effect. And I don't need to tell you this, but for the recording and for all those civic leaders who are not here tonight, but who I hope will watch this at some point, moths are the most important nocturnal pollinator in our ecosystems. And so when there's a lot of light pollution in an environment, they won't come out. And so no pollination takes place. There's the insect apocalypse. Okay, and so light pollution is certainly a factor in this insect loss. Those of you who are old enough to remember when we used to have yellow lights on our porches, bug lights, right? And the problem is the bugs are attracted to blue light, and they are relatively insensitive to the yellow light. And so when you replace that yellow light on your porch with an LED, which puts out a lot of blue light, we'll get to that in a minute, it's not a very good combination. It affects bird migration, of course. Birds migrate mostly at night. And because of that, they pick up, they have little magnets in their head that are sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field, but also they're looking for visual cues like glints of moonlight off the ocean, off their right-hand wing. But if you put a 30-story skyscraper in the middle of their flight path, and most songbirds migrate at altitudes of 300 feet or lower, then they think that's their guiding light, and so they just circle around it. Now, we have a major migration route up the East Coast here called the Atlantic Flyway, and when those birds encounter a bright light, ordinarily they would just fly in a straight line based on their visual cues, but if they encounter a skyscraper or some other bright light, they just circle and circle and circle for hours all night. And then they fall out of the sky either dead or exhausted, and they become easy prey. Conservative estimate is 600 million bird deaths annually due to collisions with buildings at night during their migrations. Not particularly germane for us here, but down in Florida, sea turtle hatchlings are big, and when the hatchlings, the eggs are laid in the beach sand. When they hatch, they have to make it to the water as quickly as they can. Again, they're looking for visual cues, glints off the water. If there happens to be a resort nearby in the wrong direction, they'll head to that resort instead of the water, with awful consequences, often becoming roadkill. Sorry for sensitive eyes, but that's how it is. Now, us humans, we're affected as well. It turns out that at night, in the dark, our bodies produce melatonin. You've all heard that term. It's an incredibly intimate, that melatonin has an intimate involvement with our body's general well-being, our immune system, and the melatonin in our bloodstream is produced only in darkness. About 20 years ago, it was discovered that there is a little sensor in our eye, not associated with vision. It's basically an on-off switch for our brain. And when it's dark enough, this little sensor tells the pineal gland, which in our brain, which secretes the melatonin, make melatonin. So as long as it's dark, you don't even have to be asleep. You just need to be in the dark, and your body will produce melatonin. But if in the middle of the night you make a raid on the fridge, right, or you have to go to the bathroom, and you open up that fridge and the blast of white light hits your face, your melatonin production crashes and you got to start all over again. So in the Beatty household, we don't have any white lights at night. We go out at Christmas time and scavenge all the little red Christmas tree bulbs. Those are our night lights to get around in. And this is not just an incidental effect. Back in the 1970s, 80s, excuse me, it was first realized that people who do extended periods of work that disrupts their circadian system, like night shift workers or emergency room nurses, where they're never really quite right in terms of their sleep cycle, have a demonstrably higher incidence of breast cancer in women, prostate cancer in men. And so this is a study using laboratory mice that have been implanted with human cancers to see what happens to those cancer growths on mice that are kept in complete darkness. That's the open white circles here. Their tumor growth rate was much slower than mice that were constantly exposed to light, no melatonin in their bloodstream. So we don't fully understand the role that melatonin plays in cancer inhibition, but it's an ongoing piece of work. Suffice it to say that it's now considered a probable carcinogen to be involved in this kind of work at night over long periods of time. And in fact, the American Medical Association has gotten involved with this as well. It's really funny. The Dark Sky Association has been around since 1988, and we have been banging this drum for all this time. And in 2012, when the AMA came out with something about light pollution, everybody paid attention. And that's when a whole bunch of bylaws were written and efforts made. Finally, energy waste. This is a picture of the Earth at night. You've all seen pictures like this taken by satellites. This is the United States in isolation. And when I first, you can easily make out the East Coast, not so much the West Coast. When I first saw this, I thought, what the heck is this up in North Dakota? There's nothing there. West Texas, what is all this? Anyway, I guess? Fracking, yeah. Burn off. Just the lights on the 24/7 operations on a massive scale in these places. And so here is oops, I went too fast. Here is a video. This is now a little bit dated. You might have heard that there was an astronaut named Don Pettit who just recently came back from a stint on the space station. He's an astronomer astronaut. I can't wait to see all the images of Earth at night that he has taken. Let's see if I can, it's not going to play. Okay, well, we're just going to skip it then. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so we're coming over the Gulf of Mexico. This is, that is going to be Houston. Here's New Orleans. Here's Florida. A giant wasteland of light Florida is. Atlanta. You can see the eastern seaboard. Even the dark Carolina coast, like it's really, so you see all the cities going up. Here's Richmond, Washington, Philly, Baltimore's here, New York, and here we are here in Massachusetts. And this is Maine. Notice the huge dark hole here in central Maine. This is sky glow. This is not an aurora. It's a phenomenon known as sky glow. So that's what we're dealing with. Scientists realized in a major research study from about 2 years ago, based on measurements that are taken not from space but from the ground by people on the ground, that the rate of light pollution over the world as a whole is increasing at a rate of 7 to 10% per year. That is higher than inflation, and it's basically unsustainable. Our night skies are in peril of disappearing at this rate. And so here's the East Coast in a little bit more detail, taken by a satellite. Here's Boston, taken by Don Pettit during one of his early missions. This is now about 20 years old. And I want you to notice the web of lights extending out from Boston. And you might think, that's Route 93, that's the Mass Pike. It's not. These are the state highways. These are the places that have, all-night gas stations and fast food places and so forth. And so they are the most obvious. In the original of this, I can make out every main street in Boston. I was in contact with Don a little bit while he was on the space station, this most recent gig of his. He's now 70 years old. In fact, he turned 70 on the day he came back. And he said, Kelly, when I get back, I have so many images. We're going to write a book about cities at night. So we'll see. All right, let's bring this a little bit closer to home. This is a color-coded map showing how much light pollution you have in this area. You want this to be black. It's not. The good news is it's not red like downtown Boston is, but I don't need to tell you that overall you have quite a bit of light pollution here. And I can tell you how much. So I drew a rough box around what I thought the shape of Wellesley. How did I do? Pretty close? Yeah, more or less. Okay. And then I tracked it over time for the last 12 years or so. Now I have good news and bad news. The good news is, if you believe the trend, by the way, these high peaks here, you notice they're all at the beginning of the year. This is when there was snow cover on the ground. All right, so pay attention to like all these down here. There is a gradual reduction over time. It's roughly about 2% per year, right? The problem is that the satellite sensors, this is satellite data, the satellites that take these measurements are blind to blue light. And what have we done in the last 20 years? We've replaced all of the street lights that emitted no blue light and replaced them with LEDs that emit plenty of blue light. So that's the bad news. It's probably worse than this curve would account for. Not only that, the top line is for Wellesley. The bottom line is for Mass Audubon's center not far from here, right? It's like, I don't know, 15 to 20% of what you have here. And so I can show you, if anybody's interested, where to go to get this information. Since it's being recorded, I'll tell you, it's called lighttrends.lightpollutionmap.info. lighttrends.lightpollutionmap.info. You can play the game yourself, put a box around the real Wellesley or anything else that is nearby, and you can find that. Now, I do know that you've got an outdoor lighting ordinance here in Wellesley. It's an odd one. Odd in the sense, I just picked out 3 of them. If I was reading it correctly, and maybe I missed something here, first of all, it only applies to commercial construction and to illuminated signs. Second thing is it had to completely exempt our 1 and 2 family dwellings. And the third thing is that it says that every light shall be fully shielded. There was no specification. So like every porch light, every landscape light, every light of any brightness has to be fully shielded. I seriously doubt that that's being followed. So maybe there's a version 2 in your future. But we're going to talk now for most of the rest of this about LEDs, an incredible technology. It's a once in a multi-generational change in the way we light our night sky. They're incredibly, you all know this, they're incredibly efficient. They can do things that pre-existing lighting systems just couldn't do, like be turned on and off a lot. The high pressure sodium lights that they largely replaced, those peachy colored lights, did not like to be turned on and off at all, which explains a lot. That's, by the way, 1950s technology. Explains a lot of why so many of those lights, even now, come on at dusk, stay on all night, and go off at dawn. 4,125 hours a year, but who's counting? And so the thing is, LEDs are incredibly efficient. They can do amazing things, and they're well worth it if they're done right. This is a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to introduce you to something called color temperature. It uses a temperature scale, the Kelvin temperature scale, as a proxy for how much blue light is in a light source. Okay, now I want you to imagine 2 lights side by side, a candle flame and your gas grill. Candle flame's color is, what color is a candle? Yellow, okay. You get another chance, don't worry. And a gas flame? Blue. And which one is hotter? Blue by a lot. It's counterintuitive, right? We grow up thinking blue is cold and red is hot. But when it comes to light, it's just the other way. And so this color temperature is a measure of the temperature that tells us how much blue light is in that source. This is what color temperature looks like in lighting. And so when LEDs were first introduced for wide-scale applications, say as streetlights, the most common color temperatures were 5,000 and 6,000 Kelvin, a very harsh blue light. And in Chelmsford, we had a company come in called Johnson Controls that signed a contract with the town to overhaul all of the electrical systems, including switching out our street lights, which were high pressure sodium, which is down here about this color, for LED street lights. And they were going to install 5,700 Kelvin street lights. And I got involved and I said, if you put those in, you're going to have a riot because people will not like that at all. We settled on 4,000, which was the best we could get at that time. Now, this notion of color temperature may seem like a techie thing to you, but I assure you, it's on every bulb you buy. It's on the packaging. Maybe it has a fancy color, panel like this, but it will tell you what the color temperature of that light bulb is. And what you want to aim for in everything you do is the lowest color temperature you can get for that particular application. Right now, or indoors. Indoors too. You've heard a lot of people say, don't read your devices just before bed because it can interrupt. Same thing with like your homeowner lights. You want to, as your evening wears on, you want lower and lower lighting levels and warmer color temperatures if you can do it. And so we're going back to this again, because here's the thing. Remember the rods, how they are so sensitive in the blue light? Our eyes are very sensitive to blue light at night, incredibly sensitive. That's why it hurts so much to look at those headlights. And so this is the old style of high pressure sodium. This is what got replaced. And you notice there's almost no blue light in that at all. This is the spectrum of that light. It looks orange because it is orange. And orange is great. A modern LED, this is 5,000 Kelvin here. Notice the huge blue spike here. This is sort of native to LEDs. Now, when you get a warmer color temperature like 3,000, that blue spike is still there. It's just being muted. They use chemicals on the inside of the LED to absorb all the blue light and re-radiate it at some other color, so they don't look as blue. It's the same with a fluorescent bulb, by the way. The same thing happens with that. It's called a phosphor on the inside. And so you can see how much less blue light there is. Pay close attention to the shape of this curve, okay? See the heavy black line, same curve? That's the emission from a blue-rich LED. The thin black line is the response of your cones during the daytime. The dashed black line is that little sensor in your eye saying make melatonin. And notice that the peak of the blue light from an LED is right in the wheelhouse of that sensor. That's why blue light is so destructive, damaging, inhibiting at night to our circadian system. And so we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of blue light at night everywhere we can. Blue light causes the most sky glow, the most nocturnal environmental disruption, the most human circadian impacts, right? And so that's the name of the game. So LEDs have been installed in lots and lots of places across the Commonwealth. There was a kind of a funding system about 10 years ago called the Green Cities program. And a lot of towns adopted streetlights. This is in Cambridge. I would sure hate to be the person living in this second floor house. The good thing is that streetlights, and I don't know if they exist here in Wellesley or not, maybe somebody can tell me, you can buy streetlight. On top of the streetlight, look next time, there's a little cylinder, kind of like the shape of a hockey puck, that is the day-night sensor. All right? That's what causes the streetlight to come on at dusk and turn off at dawn. You can replace that with an electronic component, which basically makes it a Wi-Fi enabled streetlight, so that somebody at the DPW, if Mrs. Smith says, this light is too bright, can you please turn it down? If it's enabled with these smart controllers, somebody at the DPW can actually make it half as bright or a third as bright. Now, in Cambridge's defense, at 10 o'clock at night, every night, their system is completely wired, as only Cambridge would, of course. Their system's completely wired, and all the lights go to 50% brightness. In a lot of towns, it's now, they go down to a third of the normal brightness, and people still have plenty of light to work with. And so the AMA has again weighed in on this. This is almost a decade old now, that 3,000 Kelvin and lower is what you want to aim for your streetlights. Recently, the town of Pepperell installed new streetlights. And there's one of our dark sky activists lives in Pepperell, and he convinced the city to put in not only a demo test of different kinds of streetlights, but he got them to put in some samples as low as 2,200 Kelvin, which is essentially the same color as the high-pressure sodium that they were replacing. And in fact, one of these pictures is a high-pressure sodium, what they had, and one of them is the new 2,200 Kelvin LED. Can you tell which one it is? It's on the left. There's less glare, lower cost, favored by citizens, and I want you to notice that the coverage on the ground is a little bit more even. They're thrilled with this, and they're saving a lot of money because they're driving these at a third of the rated wattage on the LEDs. They've actually turned down the power. You may see this every once in a while. This is not a new style LED. This is a faulty LED that's freaked out and is shining purple. And if you see one of those, report it, because it's one that failed badly. I threw that in for a little comic relief. Anyway, when I started in this game, light pollution was a fringe thing. You notice that in this last 45 minutes, I have said almost nothing about astronomy. That's because it's not just about astronomy. It's about our everyday life here on the ground. And it's not a fringe topic anymore like it was 30 years ago when I got in on this. It's now mainstream all over the place. Many, many media outlets are banging this drum for light pollution control. So there's a typo here. It should say, see that glow over there? That's the Natick Mall. It's a little dated now, but a great summary of what I've been talking about is a public service video called Losing the Dark. You can find it on YouTube. There's the direct link for it. It's just Losing the Dark. It's about 10 minutes long, and it covers a lot of this material that I have been covering. It doesn't do LEDs very much. Now, here's the thing. 20 years ago, the lighting industry was opposed to what I just told you for the last hour. They thought that by installing fully shielded lights, you'd have to rip out all the street lights in your town and put them closer together so you could have enough light on the ground. Well, time has shown the wisdom of what we've been talking about. There's now a large-scale partnership between the Dark Sky Association and the IES, which is the Illuminating Engineering Society. That is the standard-setting organization for lighting in the country. And they came out a few years ago with something called the 5 Principles of Responsible Outdoor Lighting. You can see them listed there. It's pretty common sense. Use light only where it has a purpose, direct it only where it's needed, have it on only when it needs to be, have it be a warm color temperature, right? This is a graphic that kind of shows that. And if you follow these principles, you're well on your way. Even without metrics or lumens or color temperature, you're on your way to controlling the light in your nighttime environment. So here's some take-homes for you. This is what you can do in your home and here in your community. First, turn off your lights when they're not needed. Shield them so that they're not going all over the place. Use dimmable bulbs. If possible, use warm color temperatures. Now you can speak confidently of color temperature among your friends. And use low output bulbs. All right. And if you insist on having security lights in your backyard, fine, but put them on a motion sensor. If you've got a security light that's on all night, every night, right? Unless you're in the habit of staring out your bedroom window all night, you're not helping. You're just showing the bad guys what you've got in your yard. And so a motion sensor is a much more cost-effective. And then by all means, point those things down. This is a real case study in the island of Nantucket, which has got, the whole island has filed for dark sky certification. They're really into it down there. This is a school. You can see the glare from the lights, making it very difficult to see. They took these lights and all they did was point them down, and this was the result. Yes, it's an oh wow change. And now, no glare, you can see everything. The light is in the area that you want it to be, which is where you're walking and going in and out of the building. You can do that here at your house too. I want to get back to this. I showed you this before. I want to emphasize this time the 51,000 citizen scientist observation of naked eye stellar visibility. What does that mean? I give you a chance to redeem yourself, okay? You go outside at night and you look up at the sky and you try to determine what is the faintest star you can see, all right? Some nights, if it's really clear, you'll see more stars. Other nights, not as much. If you move away from your light-polluted environment, by the way, if you want to go stargazing here, you have some wonderful properties. There's this land conservation trust I've heard about that has some really nice properties. When it comes to light pollution, the name of the game is, say there's a meteor shower or something, you want to get away from any immediate source of light. Where the glare will hit your eye. You want to get away from street lights, or for heaven's sakes, don't turn on your porch lights to try to go stargaze. And go to someplace that's locally dark. It can even be like a soccer field or a baseball field, or a high school football stadium outside of the 100 hours a year that they're allowed to use their lights. And so if you go to this website, this is your homework. For the next time I come here, I want to know all about what you did using globeatnight.org. It's a 2-decade-long global effort to measure the brightness, how dark the sky is using the visibility of stars. And that's where those 51,000 measurements came from. From people like you making measurements on a clear night. And astronomers use a scale called magnitude to tell us what is the faintest star we can see. The brightest stars are magnitude 0. You can see those practically all the time. The faintest ones are magnitude 5 and 6, which you have to be in a really dark space. So you download from this website or the app on your phone little maps for different parts of the sky, different times of the year. No experience is necessary. No equipment is necessary. You just need to go outside, let your eye get adapted to the darkness, at least like 20 minutes or so. From a dark sky, look up in the sky, compare what you see in the sky with what the maps say, find the number that corresponds. Take that number, go to the website, tell it where you are, tell it what your sky conditions are, tell it which of these maps most matches, hit send, and you become part of a worldwide database and of Globe at Night. Now, there is a faster way to do it, and I would highly recommend that you buy one of these for your land trust. This is called a sky quality meter, okay? I can go outside, and that's how fast it takes to make a measurement of the night sky, right? I can take this anytime. It's very portable. It's one button. You can't mess it up. And then you can report that number instead of those magnitudes to Globe at Night. And so when you do that, when enough people do that, you get a lot of points. And by the way, when you make that measurement and send it in, you get instant gratification because you can go running to the map and seeing where your dot is, right? Now, I didn't quite get all the way out to Wellesley. I apologize. But you can see this is last year's data. There are not very many dots in the greater Boston area. The darker the dot, the darker the sky. So I seriously doubt that in Fenway it's magnitude 6 skies, but I could believe these numbers down here in Newton. So when I come back next year, when all of your city leaders are here, and we have this talk again, I catch up on where you're at, that map better be full of dots over Wellesley and environment. Wherever you go, I take that sky quality meter with me all around the world. I'm constantly making measurements and submitting them to this map. And I hope you will do too. So, in summary, the name of the game is to light only when you need it, where you need it, and in just the right amount, because everything else is waste. Thank you all very much. This is how to reach me. Thank you for coming tonight, and let's have some questions, please. Come on, it's time to stump the astronomer. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, but just not to pollinate. Yeah, bugs are drawn to light, and that's part of the problem. So you're right, it seems a little counterintuitive, but we don't want the moths attracted to the light. We want them attracted to the flowers down here. And so the study that I was citing showed that when there is light pollution present, the number of moths that come out to play their pollinator role is greatly reduced. Yeah. Yes? Right, right. Her question was how many towns in Massachusetts have outdoor lighting ordinances that affect residential in addition to the commercial? There are about 60 overall that's of any kind. And I actually haven't counted that specific one, but I've seen a lot of them. And most of them have, like the one in Chelmsford that has been on the books since the year 2000, say if your light source of any kind, whether you're residential or commercial, is above a certain number of lumens, the amount of light that it puts out, basically 1,000 lumens, 800 lumens is what a porch light, typical porch light. We used to use 60-watt incandescent, so to gauge. Anything above that, brighter than that, must be fully shielded. And that's across the board, whether it's commercial or residential. So it doesn't really spell out specifically. I'm in the process of trying to get, and so I would have to say that the number that apply to everyone, including residential, is at least 75%. If for no other reason than it makes a blanket statement. Yours does too. The one in Wellesley says, no, you're right. It doesn't. It excludes the single and yeah. So we have work to do on that.
Part of the difference for the citizen, what's the best way to find out who are the towns that
Yeah.
put these in, when they put
If you go to, her question is, how do you find out what other towns are doing, and specifically whether they've got something for residential? If you go to darkskymass.org, we have a list of all the towns and links to their light ordinances. So you can find out what others, that's how I found yours. And when you build a house, right, there are all kinds of codes that you have to, building codes that you have to satisfy. Now, those building codes are not in your town's bylaws because they're part of the state building code. There's nothing in the state building code about lighting. And so consequently, if you wanted to control lighting with an ordinance, you necessarily have to do it at the local level with a local bylaw. And, this scares a lot of town meeting representatives. It's technical. There's numbers here. And I would say, look, you pass all kinds of zoning regulations with setbacks and, number of parking spaces per denizen and stuff like that. The numbers are there. The fact that we're dealing with color, temperature, and lumens should not be an inhibition to having a reasonable bylaw. The other thing that a lot of these, there may be 60, within the state, virtually none of them have an enforcement mechanism. They might say, thou shalt not, whatever. But if you do, there's no consequence because no one's enforcing it. It's not spelled out. So that is a problem. In the back? You can either wait for the microphone or I can repeat your question for the TV.
I heard that you said that you're working to upgrade Chelmsford's bylaws. So could that maybe be a model that some of the rest could follow? And do you have enforcement built into that one?
Yes and yes. However, I will say I actually had to withdraw it from our town meeting. I had the vote of the planning board. I had the vote of the select board. I had all kinds of folks like you, our conservation commission, lined up to support it. And one of the town meeting members sent out a really nasty opposition email to all the town meeting reps that was full of mistakes on the day that the vote was to be taken. Now, I could have spent all my time trying to, beat that back. But one of the things that I didn't go after a zoning bylaw, which is what most everybody does. I was going after, there were two things about mine that are groundbreaking. One is that it was a general bylaw, not a zoning bylaw. In general bylaw, I can capture the city, the utilities, anybody who's putting up lighting. So that was profound. Second thing was, I declared in this general bylaw, in a zoning bylaw, everything that happened beforehand is grandfathered, but in my general bylaw, that doesn't apply. So I said, as of the passage of this bylaw, every light that isn't shielded is non-conforming. You're non-conforming. But I gave you 10 years to make it conforming. It's called a sunset clause or grace period, if you want to think of it that way. And the third thing is we had specific wording about enforcement. We designated somebody in town government or a contract hire, whatever, to be the lighting standards officer. And that person would be the go-to person if you had a beef with your neighbor or something like that. And it didn't require a new hire. The town obviously could hire a professional if they wanted to adjudicate tough cases. But it probably would have been and will be somebody in the building department, a building inspector kind of person. But the real reason I withdrew it was not because of that nasty email, is that I really hadn't fully appreciated what the consequences were for the town to abide by this bylaw. The town had put in streetlights that were 4,000 Kelvin, so those would have to be changed. They did an awful job with the area lighting around the schools and so forth, parking lots. And I'm like many towns, we're under a lot of financial stress right now. Our insurance premiums are double digits. Inflation is taking its toll. And we're under a Prop 2.5 cap, just like every other town is. And I had a great discussion with the Department of Public Works about the streetlights that we've got, which were installed 12 years ago. Now, the normal lifetime for streetlights is about 20 years. We really don't know how long LEDs will last. But she agreed with me, our DPW director is a she, that within the next 10 years, they were likely going to have to replace the town's streetlights. So I thought that was, sort of consistent with the thing. But then when she went in and started looking at the numbers, first of all, it was going to be expensive. Second of all, maybe they weren't going to replace them in 10 years. She kind of waffled a little bit. But I realized that I should be a little bit more sensitive to the impact on the town. I still want the town to change its lights, but I want to work with the town. I want them on my side. I don't want them to be in opposition to what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retool this and come back in another town meeting in a way. So as I said, I got the select board was in favor. The planning board was strongly in favor. They actually co-sponsored it with me. Our finance committee voted 0-6 against. So my plan is to make them 6-0 in favor for next time. Yes, go ahead.
In your talk, you discussed the LED headlights. So I know they're bad for the environment, bad for my vision, but do you know of any, are they unsafe? And have there been studies done on that? It seems to me I look away from those lights instead of watching the road more carefully. So I find them, maybe it's my age, boy, it's detrimental.
It is. Let's go into the physiology of the eye. As you get older, things happen to your eye that cause it to scatter light more readily. That's why cataracts, for example, or there are buildup of particulates inside your eye that scatter light. And so any strong light source, like that headlight, is going to cause you disproportionately more glare every now and then with a car coming at me, like coming over the crest of a hill or something. And so the National Highway Transportation Safety Commission has been getting an earful about these lights. They are harsher for a couple of reasons. One is that they are bluer. They're LEDs, right? Old style lights were not. And this is subtle. You remember headlights didn't always used to be such pinpoint things. They used to be big round globes on the car. And so when that globe is focused on your retina, the light is spread over a little circle on your retina. That's how it works. But if it's a point source, it could be just as bright as the whole headlight used to be, but now all of that light is focused on one point in your retina, and that causes overload. And so the National Highway Transportation Safety Council is, unfortunately, they're not going to do away with the bright headlights that we now have, because it cuts both ways. You as the driver can see better with these brighter lights. There's no question, all right? And if you're on the road all by yourself, you're safer doing it that way. The problem is the people coming at you. And so what the trend is to use what the Europeans have been doing for some time now. Their cars are equipped with, and a few cars do have them now, they dim automatically. If you're driving with your high beams and you come across another car, even the taillights of another car, the headlights will sense it and dim down. So that's the direction it's going. In terms of overall light pollution, not nearly as bad as all the street lights and all the security lights that we have going on. Those are the low-hanging fruit. Yes, sir. Hold on a second. Here, use this.
Could you comment on the following? I can't remember where I saw this, but it may have been National Audubon or whatever. They were talking about the motion detection lights in your backyard, and they were recommending getting rid of those even because of that. Because if an owl flies in, the lights are going to turn on, and it's going to disrupt what the owl is going to be trying to capture.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. I'll look into it. What I can say is that you can adjust the sensitivity. And so, you know, you might not want the lights to come on if something is happening at the periphery of your property. If something is close to your property, you can adjust that sensor so it's pointed farther down or even less sensitive. I will look into that. I was unaware that National Audubon might have a policy. Yeah, I know. It's worth exploring. That's what a science reporter does. I seek the truth.
I'm trying to recall the statistic you put out, which was an increase in light by 7 to 10% per year. So is the night sky going to be a white sky in 10 years' time? And I don't understand that statistic.
Yes. I mean, that's the trend, right? Now, it's not uniformly distributed across the U.S. You saw from the maps, the cities are getting worse. And so part of the issue is that we can't trust what we're seeing from the satellites because the satellites are blind in blue light. So I can show you that curve, right, based on, but I have to say it doesn't include the blue light, and it could be a lot worse, and the satellite wouldn't see it. Part of the problem, I've been in touch with the scientist who did the studies in Germany, Christopher Kaiba, a great guy. When he did this study using globe at night data, he actually did not use the sky quality meter data, the actual objective measurements. He was only using what people had estimated looking by eye. And trust me, there's a lot of variation. You saw somebody who thought that from, you know, the Fenway, it was like a magnitude 6 sky, which just is not possible. So that's a spurious data point. What Kaiba is now looking for is sky quality metadata taken multiple times during a night and multiple times during the year. Sounds like something you're all capable of doing, right? And by the way, these sky quality meters, they cost about $150. So you can get one for the land trust and start taking, seriously, create a team, take regular measurements from your properties, and this will be really valuable over the long term. If, for example, you want to come before town meeting and say, we can prove that the light pollution over the North 40, is that the property that you're just working on, has increased by X percent. We have numbers that can prove that. That sky quality meter will provide it for you. And I hope it doesn't increase. You saw the curve. The trend of the curve for Wellesley overall was down. It was decreasing. And that's good if it's real. And there's some value to that. It could, I see lots of places that are a lot worse. And so my suggestion is start taking your own measurements and see where they lead.
Be a way to scale up measurement across Massachusetts. Every town should have meters.
Well, his point is every town should have meters, yes. Unfortunately, at this point, only about 12 of them have me give this talk. So maybe we can talk to, you know, we're trying. Yeah. That's true. So like, for example, MIT's observatory is located in Groton, and they have a higher end version of this that's constantly taking data all the time. And unfortunately, the sky over this observatory where real science is done for astronomy, the sky has been getting worse and worse and worse there because of Westford and Groton and Littleton and the towns around it. Yes, sir.
Maybe I can shout. On the sky quality meter, thank you. On the sky quality meter, I'm interested in how quickly it changes as you move. So you talked about doing it over the North 40, and it would be a different reading if we're, you know, half a mile away in downtown Wellesley. Is that relevant data?
Yeah, it's relative. So let's say that you're in the middle of the North 40 and there's no security light within, hundreds of yards. So there are no local sources of scattered light in your sky. All right. As you get closer and closer to town, the light pollution overhead, even if you have no lights in your vision, the amount of scattered light overhead will increase, even on a scale of a half a mile. That's right. So that's why if you institute a policy like a program like this, I really encourage you to do it. It's great, and you don't need the sky quality meter. It's a citizen science thing. You could do real science that gets used by real researchers, right, in the furthering of this, and especially for your town. This is my call to all of the conservation commissions and land trusts. It's in your best interest to start taking these measurements so that you can see what you've got and where it's going, where you're going with it.
Does it have a GPS built in?
It doesn't have a GPS built in. The phone app does, because you can use it on your phone, and your phone has a GPS, right?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for the talk. I think you mentioned this and I forgot. You recommended using warm light, but then you also showed that the rod is more sensitive to blue spectrum. So I wonder, why is that the case when you want to concentrate the wavelength on which part your eyes is more sensitive to? And also broader to that, is filter one of the things that people are considering to kind of restrict the light to a spectrum where human eyes can see, and so that it's less detrimental to other animals like insects?
Right. So the first thing is that, yes, your rods are most sensitive to blue light, but they can see all wavelengths, right? So we astronomers, when we're out doing stargazing, we have red flashlights, and we can see perfectly well our charts and our eyepieces and the numbers with the red flashlight, but it doesn't affect our dark adaptation. And so that's one thing. So your eyes, people confuse, and maybe some of you are thinking, oh, well, a warm color temperature will be a dimmer light. No, that's not. It's just a different color. But the intensity is the lumens. That's how much light is being put out by the light. Now, I've left it at home. I blame Larry for not letting me put it in my car. I had it set aside, and he didn't catch me. I have a little demo. I have two lights side by side, exactly the same wattage, exactly the same number of lumens. One's 4,000 K, the other is 2,700. And you can tell the color difference very obviously. And importantly, even in a room like this, the higher color temperature light looks brighter. It's something called the Purkinje effect. And that's why at night, a town that, you replaced your street lights with LEDs, and maybe if somebody was paying close attention, they were trying to match how many lumens you used to have and how many lumens you want. But because there's so much more blue light, even at the warmer color temperatures, LEDs still put out blue light, your eyes will perceive it as being brighter. And so you can literally use fewer lumens as long as there's a little blue light in it and see just as well. And the corollary to that is just because you're using a warm color temperature, even an especially warm, some of these national parks, they're using pure amber light, which has a color temperature of it's certainly 1800, something like that, really way down in, and that's the best of the best in terms of environmental impact, but you can still see, right? Remember that porch light? It's yellow, but you can still see. And so it's really a matter of recalibrating how much light you think you need. And I'll just close with this one thing, and then maybe I'll let you all go home. A lot of the outdoor lighting ordinances that I work with call for a limit on the amount of light trespass going into a neighbor's property of 1/10 of a foot candle. Now, that doesn't sound like much, and it's by design, it isn't much. But 1/10 of a foot candle is the equivalent to between, depending on whose data you look at, 5 to 10 times the brightness of a full moon. Now, I'm sure you've all made your way in the night under the light of a full moon and you've been able to see the ground just fine. Now imagine 10 times that brightness, you'd have no problem, right? So as a limit to how much, we humans can see pretty darn well at night if there's no glare in our field of view, if we allow our eyes to adjust. Here's your last bit of physiology, and then I promise I will turn this microphone off. We talk about adapting to the darkness, and your eyes do that in two ways. First, your pupils dilate, right? That's the part that we all know. Our pupils dilate, the more light into our eyes, we can see better. For those of you who have either work with small kids or young kids or have grandchildren, they can see fainter stars at night than you can because their eyes open more than yours do. As you get older, your eye's ability to dilate loses about 1 millimeter per decade after the age of 40. So many of you can see fainter stars than I can, or I used to be able to see fainter stars than I can now. But that's not the only part of dark adaptation. Over time, you actually can see fainter and fainter over a period of about an hour because your retina secretes a substance called rhodopsin, sometimes called visual purple, that essentially puts your retina on steroids, that allows you to see fainter and fainter and fainter over the course of a night. That's why if you go camping, you know, and you wake up in the middle of the night and you go outside your tent and like the stars are just amazing because your eye has been able to build this all up. One blast of white light is all it takes to bleach all of that rhodopsin, and you got to start over. That's why, again, getting back to the headlights, as you're driving along, you know your eyes are kind of getting adjusted to the darkness. There might be a little rhodopsin, and then you see that one blast of white light, and it's almost painfully bright. And so now that I've scared you all, I'm going to say thank you again, and see you again.
Something in the Boston area. We're right on the coastal flyway. We should do some. Okay, we'll be glad to help. Second is that you can do something local in your own home. Can you believe Nina's of Wellesley has dark sky compliant outdoor lights in Linden, and they're reasonable. They're not the Nina's price. So they know about it. They knew about this. They didn't have any flyers for the companies that produce it, but they're really nice, and they'll show you too if you say you want dark sky compliant. They know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and two corollaries to that. First of all, Home Depot and Lowe's both have the ability to order you dark sky friendly lighting. They might not have it on the floor, but they have it on their catalog, or check their website. Second thing is go to darksky.org, and there's a whole list of hundreds and hundreds of certified dark sky friendly lighting for any application. And once you know what it is you want and the style that you want, then you can find it and order it.
Shop local. but with that, thank you so much, Kelly. We really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.